so many ways. I appreciated the GNN. Didn't that fire you guys up? Because we saw Tbilisi in there and St. Petersburg involved. It was a great week. We had Labor Day picnics to start off. I guess it was a little hot, huh? I heard that we had a little kickball game and it got a little hot. Campus started up, right? I guess after Devo they had like 13 visitors out, so that's a great start. And today we have some very special guests with us today. Some heroes of the faith. We have Scott and Sandy Lundy here. So we did about them. They planted the Tucson church. Okay, and now they're in LA in Coachella Valley, leading a region there. I'm not exactly where that's at, so ask them, they know. But do you know the story that Kip tells about how they studied in Portland with like 25 people? All right, the movement began there. They're 2 of the 25. So make sure you get a chance to glean from them, give them a huge hug, and their sons are here, so that's awesome. Sandy's sister is here, so she's getting an aunt. So she's getting a taste of what this is all about, so that's awesome. I'm very fired up for next Sunday. It's our 5th year anniversary. So much has happened in 5 years. You know, we started with 21 people. Our inaugural service was 178 people. Wow. That was pretty cranking. Marissa got baptized that day. That's phenomenal. Max got baptized a week before or something like that. And it's exciting because so many people have been sent out. And it's a hard thing to do. We raise people to send out. And that just doesn't happen. There's a lot of training and teaching that goes on. But I'm very excited. You're going to want to make sure you bring people out because it's a Bring Your Neighbor Day. And who is our neighbor? There you go. We're supposed to love our neighbor, right? In fact, in the back, on the table there, we do have some invites if you want to grab some of those. Did you know that today is a national holiday? I didn't know if you knew that. It is Grandparents' Day. Grandparents' Day. You know, you're supposed to really give to your grandparents. You know, any grandparent. Okay, you know, meals, gifts. That's my daughter Tracy who spoke earlier, so I thought I'd share that. Okay, so one of the goals of a church leader is to really improve on the character of the members of the church. To become more like Jesus in every way. And to do that, you got to be able to lead the way. Okay, so I got to step it up all the time. And since we've had so many people sent out and all that, we got a very young church now. And so we always have to go back to the basics. Open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 11. And it's always good to go back because even some of us older people tend to forget. Now, this is an attribute that Jesus gives to disciples or Christians. And he tells us about a character that's necessary for all of us to have. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 12, Jesus says, "From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been forcefully advancing, and forceful men lay hold of it." Okay, so the title of the lesson today is Forceful Advancement. Nice. All right. First of all, the word forceful means full of force. Huh? Full of force. Powerful, vigorous, and driven. Question is, does that define you? Advancement means development toward increased understanding, quality, utility, or benefit to human welfare. And Jesus, of course, was both. Jesus was very forceful, and he advanced the kingdom. And he's saying this is what the character of Christianity is all about. Now, we can be aggressive about a lot of things in life, all right? We can be aggressive for school. We want to, get a great degree. And we can be aggressive for that job. We can go after it. I'll never forget when Alexis got baptized. Malik was standing there and going, who's that? Who's that girl? And he was focused. He's very aggressive. And aggressive to get advice, that's a good thing, right? Because he didn't want to blow it. But the question is he aggressive in everything? I just thought I'd try that. We can be aggressive for things we want. Like I said, the job, the house, that car. Did I ever tell you about my first car? Okay, I already told this.
Tell it again.
All right. But are you aggressive as a lifestyle? And that's what he's talking about. If you're a forceful person, people will want you. Because forceful people make things happen. And if you're forceful on the job, they will hire you and want to keep you, and they will pay to keep you. Because you make it happen. There's a movie that came out years ago called Wall Street. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
Late 80s, early 90s, something like that. And there's a young guy by the name of Bud Fox. And he wanted to get in with this guy who was on Wall Street. His name was Gecko. All right, what a name. Gordon Gecko. And there's a brief moment when this Gordon Gecko brings Bud to a decision. And he said, you had what it took to get in here. Do you have what it takes to stay? And that's really a lot of it. We get into a situation, we're fired up, we got in there, but are we staying in it? All right? Give you an example, marriage. People get aggressive to get married, but are they willing to do what it takes to stay there? People do this with their relationship with God. They want salvation, they want all these things, they're aggressive, when things are going bad, they're aggressive with God. But then what happens? They lose that fire and that spirit. All right, we're going to look at an example of this. We're going to go to Joshua chapter 1. One of my favorite books of the Bible. Joshua chapter 1. And we're going to start reading in verse 1. Okay, Old Testament, right? Verse 1. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it, from the right or the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you'll be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go throughout the camp, tell the people, get your supplies ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving for your own. This is an amazing situation when you think about the magnitude of what's going on here. They believe that there was 1.5 million Israelites at this time. This is a big group. And Moses has been leading this for 40 years. And God simply says to Joshua, yeah, Moses is dead. Now it's on you. Imagine you're Joshua. Even though you've been around, you've watched everything, now the pressure is on you. And God says, hey, you obey me. You be strong. You be courageous. And he says that numerous times. You notice that. And he says, you obey. You follow my decrees. Don't turn from the right or the left. In other words, don't get distracted. Stay focused and move forward. Forcefully advance the group. It's very challenging to think about this. Now, when you think about it, they're crossing the Jordan River, and they're not just going to the new land to live in it. They're taking possession of it. In other words, they have to engage in war. The people aren't just going to give this thing up. There's going to be a battle, and you will win because I'm with you. But if you don't forcefully advance, this isn't going to happen. Now, do you think 1.5 million people were okay with this thing? And God says, now, get ready. And so what does Joshua do? Verse 10, he orders the officers to tell everybody, get ready. Now, that's point number one, get ready. And God says, hey, all sorts of encouraging things. No one will be able to stand against you, but there's a war. People die. This is not a joke. And you have to kind of understand what's going on in society back then. Warfare was a lifestyle for everybody. All right? And he says, get ready. Now, how long does it take 1.5 million people to get ready? Well, he says 3 days. You got 3 days. All right, we had a lot of people move in the church here, right? How long did it take you to move? Or get ready? How long did it take you to get ready? All that packing and stuff. Montana's moved here, right? How long did it take you guys? 4 weeks. Let's cut off 3.5 of those, and you got 3 days. Now, of course, the more stuff you have, the harder it is to move. Now, they've been 40 years in the wilderness, and my guess is they didn't have a lot of stuff, but it still takes a lot. And you have to have the mindset to be ready. All right? Now, for us, the church has been going through this transition time. You guys notice that? A lot of transition. We had Cameron's move out, Johnny moved out, you had Montana's moved, and you had Chad and Paige. You have all this movement, and then you have everybody else naturally moving, because all the leases were up, right? And so there's all these transitions. But with the change of leadership, all of a sudden you got to change other things. Who's going to disciple who and all sorts of stuff. All right? And it takes a lot, you know? So we appoint new Kingdom Kids leaders, so that's awesome, right? New campus leaders. All right? We got all these new region leaders. And so we've gotten ready to what? To go. We've been getting ready for the summer. Now it's time to what? To go. Time to forcefully advance. Because it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to kind of wallow in all these things. And moving's no fun. It's not a joke. I mean, they say with stress, it's right up there with death. Yeah. And that's why a lot of people don't want to move. All right? So he's saying be strong and courageous to move forward. That's what it takes. It's a heart, aggressive heart is strong and courageous, right? Point number 2 is attack. Now you need to attack. You know, I was talking to Jericho this morning, and he came to a epiphany. And he said, I find that I don't like conflict. You don't like conflict? Wow, that's weird. Who likes conflict? Nobody likes conflict. But if you're going to forcefully advance anything, there's conflict. It's going to take you energy. It's going to take suffering. It's going to take, and other people aren't going to like it when you move forward. They don't like that stuff. Did Jesus have any conflict in his life? Yeah. Just a little bit? In fact, he got killed for it. How about the apostles? Same thing. And here's the dynamic. Things don't happen without conflict. It's just that's just the way it is. And unless you're forcefully advancing, where are you going? What's happening? Okay, so point number 2. Attack. This is where the advancement comes in. Right? And forceful. Now, what happens? Next few chapters, Joshua moves the whole group through the Jordan River. They attack Jericho, and they win. Awesome. Then they attack another smaller city, Ai. They conquer that. And so they're going through these phases, but something else happens. In Joshua chapter 10, starting in verse 1, it says, Now Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had taken Ai until he destroyed it, doing to Ai and its king what he had done to Jericho and its king, and that the people of Gibeon had made a treaty of peace with Israel and were living near it. He and his people were very much alarmed at this because Gibeon was a very important city. So they asked for help. In verse 5 it says, Then the 5 kings of the Amorites, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, joined forces. They moved up with all their troops and took possessions against Gibeon and attacked it. Okay, you got to realize something's going on here. All right, whenever you move forward, you get resistance, like I just said. And Satan is going to attack us. And I really appreciate what J.D. said in his message earlier, that the Old Testament is full of physical examples for spiritual examples for us today. And that's really what the battle is on a daily basis. Satan is going to try to stop you. And he uses the world to do it. And you've got to be able to, not turn to the right or left, you've got to stay focused and move forward and obey what God wants you to do. All right? And so what happens is you got 5 kings say, hey, these people are an issue. They're a problem. They're going to come after us. We need to band together and fight them. Joshua knows this. Look what he does. Verse 7. So Joshua marched up from Gilgal with his entire army, including all the best fighting men. The Lord said to Joshua, Do not be afraid of them. I've given them into your hand. Not one of them will be able to stand against you. After an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua took them by surprise. The Lord threw them into confusion before Israel, who defeated them in a great victory at Gibeon. Israel pursued them along the road going up to Beth Horon and cut them down all the way to Asakah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel on the road down to the Beth Horon to Asakah, the Lord hurled large hailstones down on them from the sky. And more of them died from the hailstones than were killed by the swords of the Israelites. Okay, imagine this. You've just been at war. And you've had a number of battles. And then you find out these 5 kings are gathering together. What does Joshua call the whole army to? Let's do an all-night march. How do you feel after an all-night walk? Carrying weaponry and all that. And they attack them. All right? And what happens? God gets fired up. He says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw them into confusion. You imagine you're ready to attack them, and they're just kind of, they're all confused. Maybe they're hitting each other. This is crazy. And then they start running, and so the Israelites start running after them, and then God says, hailstones, that'll be good. And he starts throwing large ones. Have you ever gotten hit by an icy snowball? Oh, yes. Ouch! And these guys are dying from it. God is in the battle. He's fired up when we are aggressive, when we're forcefully advancing. But that's let's read on. Verse 12. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, O sun, stand over Gibeon, O moon, over the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. As is written in the book of Jashar. The sun stopped in the middle of the day, and stayed going down about a full day. There's never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a man. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Imagine that prayer. Now, why would Joshua do that? Joshua knew, hey, we've got them on the run. The sun's going to go down. We don't have the time to win the battle. God, can you stop the sun from going down? God's like, great idea. Boom. And it says, for a full day. That's a long day. You think your work day is long. And they're fighting. Now you got to remember, they just went from an all-night march. Okay? and they win this battle. And they have them running, and they're hey, can you imagine what people on the other side of the earth are thinking? What is going on? Sleeping in, and they don't have watches or anything. It's a sundial, or I don't know, and they just, what do we do here? Seems like a long time. But this is how God intervened. And see, God wants to do miracles in our lives when we're aggressive. But if we allow life to stop us, we stop the miracles. They just don't happen. And so what happens? Verse 16. So now the 5 kings fled and hid in the cave of Mecca. Okay, kings are hiding. Verse 27, at sunset, Joshua gave the order, and they took them down from the trees and threw them into the cave where they had been hiding. At the mouth of the cave, they placed large rocks that here today. That day, Joshua took Makkedah. He put the city and its king to the sword and totally destroyed everyone in it. He left no survivors. And he did to the king of Makkedah as he done to the king of Jericho. Okay, so they're in this battle, and what does he do? They go to their city now to attack the city. All right? So, is it time for a break? No. Time to settle down? We've had enough? I guess not. Look at verse 29. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Makkedah to Libnah and attacked it. The Lord also gave that city and its king into Israel's hand. It says he left no survivors there. Verse 31. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved from Libnah to Lachish. He took up positions against and attacked it. The Lord handed Lachish over to Israel, and Joshua took it on what? The second day. It's pretty crazy. Verse 34. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Lachish to Eglon. And they took up positions against it and attacked it. They captured it that same day and put the sword, so on and so forth. Verse 36. Then Joshua and all Israel went with him from Eglon to Hebron and attacked it. Verse 38. Then Joshua and all Israel went with him and turned around and attacked Debir. And it just goes on and on and on. Attack mode. This is what he's doing. God gave Joshua command. Joshua's, all right, we're going to go until we're done. We're going to keep attacking till we're done. All right, so what ends up happening then? Chapter 12, they literally have a list of the kings that were defeated. In verse 24, it says there were 31 kings in all. Quite the campaign. 31 kings and kingdoms. That's amazing. And in verse 40 of chapter 11, well, I'm not in the right place, but way ahead of myself. This is great. Come on, brother. You know, I think it's understanding the heart behind what Joshua's doing. It's saying, God commanded it. I'm not going to sit around and think about it. I'm going to do it. And imagine him seeing these miracles and getting motivated. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Now, for us, we've seen a lot of miracles here. This is far surpassed my expectation of what we're doing here. And John Causey has said, you guys are model church, all that. You guys heard me share that. All right, we're going to have you take care of all of Russia. Oh, okay. Oh, and Central Asia. Oh, okay. Nothing else to do. And it could be easy to get overwhelmed by it. Now, if I'm going to be called to, Joshua called the rest of the army to it. Right? But why would John want us to do this? Because we're lazy? Because we're not fired up? Because we're taking a break? To him is given much, much will be expected. And a lot of times we forget. It's kind of wearing because you send all these people out and you feel like, wow, that was hard. It's hard to grow. We'd be in the hundreds if all these people had stayed. But we're not just a Milwaukee church. We're a kingdom church. And God blesses unity. Am I right in saying that? It's hard when you have your mindset on self. Like, I want my kingdom. I'll do God's will, but I want to pull self into it. It never works. That's the chink in your armor. That selfishness will cause you to get hit. It's amazing to see 31 Kings, and he had that attack mode. Now, I want you to think, you're Joshua. Imagine the mentality, the mental toughness it would take to keep this going, to keep pushing yourself. Now think about what it takes to push all those people. 1.5 million people. To get them to go to war. And keep going. Now let me ask you this. If Joshua quit, what would happen? They would quit. All the people would quit. It would be over. It would be done. And as leaders, especially for Barb and I, if we decide to take a break, guess what? We become the ceiling. We become the example. Well, if they can slow down, quit, then we can too. And for Barb and I, we understand that. There's a dynamic here. That zeal can't be on and off. It's got to become who you are. We're going to talk a little bit about this in depth. Now, our society is one of laziness. I don't know if you've noticed that. Yeah. It's one thing, people get lazy. They don't like to push themselves. They don't like to suffer. They don't like conflict. Yeah. And so things stop you. It's that turning to the right or the left. Yeah. Do you think there was anybody in this crowd, 1.5 million people, who said, hey, this is enough. I'm done. I want a break. Maybe you've said that. And yet, Joshua was able to get them going. And I'm sure he pointed at the miracles. Listen, God is working here. This is part of the Spirit of God working together. Now, you think about, why would God do this? Why would God kill all these people? A lot of people bring that up to me. I can't believe in a God that would do that. Noah's Ark wiped out the planet. And as we study it out, you find out that later on, they didn't conquer the whole land. And what ended up happening is the people that were still there came in and began to persuade the Jews to worship other gods. And what happened was there was a breakdown in spirituality, there was a breakdown in morality, and there was just a total breakdown. And no longer were they looking to God. In spite of all the miracles, they were starting to look to other gods, which is what we do. The god of money. The god of lust. There's all sorts of things that we get into. And God says, listen, you need to be pure here or you're not going to make it. And they didn't make it. And they were trashed for over 500 years by nation after nation conquering them because they didn't fully obey what God had said. Now, once again, JV brought it up. This is a physical thing of something we need to learn on a spiritual level about ourselves. If you don't attack something completely and kill it, guess what? It's going to come back. You know how many people say to me, I'm working on this sin? You don't work on sin, you kill it. Otherwise, it's just going to come back. And whatever you feed will grow. You struggle with something, hey, society's going to make sure that you're tempted. It's everywhere you want to be. And if you don't attack areas of your character, you will suffer for it. And there's a lot of people we study the Bible with, they'll say, I'm all in, I'm this and that, but I don't want to give this up. Well, that is what's going to take you out. Well, I can't forgive my uncle. I can't forgive my spouse. I can't forgive. Well, then you can't forcefully advance. You can't call people to forgive if you're unwilling to do it.
Come on, bro.
Well, I can't give up. This is so hard. Well, tell that to Jesus while you're praying about him on the cross. And you know, the suffering, if you don't attack and have that mental attitude, you'll be taken out. And then the people you study with, you've got to call them to have the same spirit, just as Joshua did with these people. If you don't call them out of it, they're going to sit in it. Everybody's got their homes. There's things that we hang on to. We have our gods. We hang on to these things that just make us feel guilty and do all sorts of horrible things to our character and our psyche. And then as a result, you know, we lose our joy. And God says, listen, I want you to experience the joy of knowing me. But you can't know me and have another God. Right. And you will not advance forcefully. Now you get those people who get it. They're fired up. The light goes on, bing, and they're fired up, and they're excited, and they go attack. And then, of course, Satan says, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and watch you do well. I'm going to throw something at you. And remember what God told Joshua, hey, you obey my commands. You've got to meditate on them. That's what it takes. Not just meditate on them, obey them. And so many people will just refuse to obey. And then they wonder why they're struggling. And it's like, nah, attack this thing. Without going after it, you're just not going to win. It's too much, too easy. And you've got to have the spirit of forceful advancement. Our society is all about the break, and that's the thing that we got to get people through. They want the vacations, live for the weekend, college students, weekend, right? Lazy society, and that's just, you know, that's the temptation. You get technology, and things get easier, and you know everything else will do the work for you. You know, a few weeks ago, you guys know that Michael Schmidt was in town, right? Yeah. And he invited us out to a breakfast, and his parents were there. So Barb and I went there, and we met him and all that. And we went into the restaurant, and there was a whole boatload of us, and we're like, can we move the tables together? And they're like, no, you can't do that. Our robot can't work if you move the tables. I said, robot? Yeah, it messes up the robots. And sure enough, they had a robot. We're you know, she takes our order, and this robot is walking around. And people walking by, and robots, you know, and it's just a bunch of trays and all that, but it's slowly moving around and stops. And you're supposed to take your food off of it. I'm thinking, how many people lost their job? Because this thing is more efficient than they are. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Robot's not lazy. Okay. You know? It's amazing to me. It's all sorts of things. You know, there's a brother I talked to this last week. He owns a construction business, and he has 145 people employed. And this is in a foreign country. And I said, so tell me about your day. What is it you do during your day? And he says, well, I've got 3 buildings we're building right now. And I spend my day harassing people to work. I'm like, really? He says, yeah. As soon as I leave, guess what? They stop. They slow down. And that's the nature. And he's trying to motivate them and get them to go. Which are you? Are you the person who'll stand there until someone tells you what to do? Are you the person that makes things happen? Or are you the person who gets other people to make things happen? Forcefully advancing. There's a dynamic here. And we can get mentally weak. We can get tired. We can get stressed out. Any of you guys stressed out at all? That'll cause you to stop. Last year when we did the Louisville planting, which was awesome, Candace had her cider team up there and all that. And there were a lot of glitches. I want to hold up Candace here. There's a lot of glitches. And, people are like, well, we can't get it done. It's not going to happen. Candace like, we're going to get this thing done. Period. We're going to get this thing done. And so they prayed about it, they thought about it, they put their heads together, and they made it happen. And, when we had the inaugural, John Causey came and says, this is the best I've ever seen. He's been around for 40 years. And now other people are watching the Louisville inaugural to learn from it. All right? That's the spirit. That's the spirit that we're talking about. And we don't want Candace to get a big head. But this is why she's appointed as a Cyper women's ministry leader. We see that throughout the scriptures. If you study anywhere, you're going to find that God rewards the aggressive spirit. All the prophets, aggressive spirit. And miracles happen through them. We're going to ask, why? What motivates people to do this? I think, number one, they see the need. Okay? Tomorrow is 9/11, right? And we lived in New York. We planted Queens many years ago. And everybody's got a story about 9/11. Where were you? Oh, you want a conversation? Where were you on 9/11? You know. Well, there's a guy I studied the Bible with. His name was Carlos. And he worked right next door to one of the towers. And he could hear the plane coming, and he heard it hit. Wow. Now, he used to work as, I think it's an EMT, as an ambulance driver. Or he just worked with it. And he immediately ran in to help people. And there's a very famous picture of this guy, if you go to the memorial, and it was in all the news. It was international. His picture went international. And there was a picture of him helping this woman with a police officer on the other side. Okay? And I was talking about it, and he said, yeah, moments after that, they both died.
Oh, wow.
I was like, whoa. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. He says, yeah, the woman got hit from debris coming down. And so the cop turned and went back in and got killed in there. And he shared how he couldn't just leave. He kept going back and in. And then when the tower fell, he was hiding behind a fire truck. And he couldn't see anything. He had all the smoke. And all of a sudden he felt his arm go like that. And he thought, oh my gosh, I just lost my arm. But then he went like this to touch his nose, and he realized, because he couldn't even see his hand. And he spent the whole day there trying to rescue people. But the problem was, he still had survivor's guilt. And he couldn't get over it. And the thing that came over and over with a lot of people that I talked to is I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. And see, we've got a lot of needs out there. Do we stand with blinders on and do nothing? We just heard this GNN about Maui. As soon as that thing happened, we had our mercy ambassadors there. Boom. I don't know if you guys saw it in the picture, but Oprah was in the group with us, our people. Okay? Now you got Marrakesh. It's Morocco, but Marrakesh is a city in Morocco with the earthquake. They said over 2,000 people have died. Email was sent out yesterday. Who do we know? We're trying to get to Morocco. We're not there yet. Who do we know that can go and help? And it's that attack mode that God loves. God will honor when we desire to obey, do His will with the right heart. That's point number 3. It's going to be short. Motivated by grace. Look at 1 Corinthians 15. You guys getting this? 1 Corinthians 15. Verse 9. Okay, Paul shares a little bit about his heart. 1 Corinthians 15:9. He says, "For I am the least of the apostles, and do not even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And His grace to me was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them. Yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me." You hear from Paul his motivation. He's like, listen, I don't deserve to even be an apostle. Why? Because what he was doing was he was persecuting the church. He believed he was right in having Christians killed. And then he came to realize he was wrong. And then he's like, I can't just not do anything. And he realized, listen, I deserved hell. Which is true for all of us. And he's motivated by grace. Well, what's the result? Gratitude, appreciation, hard working. And he says, I worked harder than all the other apostles. That's pretty bold. But it's in the Bible. And he says, not me, but the grace of God that was within me. What motivates you to forcefully advance? Does something drastic have to happen? Someone die? Some sort of disease? Somebody's maimed in a car accident? Does something have to happen before we wake up? Paul understood it. He understood he dodged a bullet and he didn't deserve it. And that's true for all of us. You know, like I said, we all have had amazing victories here. And we can kind of rest on our victories. We can't do that. There's just too much going on. Those two motivations should keep us going. We've gotten ready. We've got everything all set up. All right? Now it's time to go. Next weekend is our anniversary. All right? And this is where we need to be aggressive. This week has got to be the week. You know, so far we've got like 30 commitments for next Sunday. That's, you know, amen, 30 commitments. But for us, I mean, in our inaugural, we had 180 people. And there was 21 people who did that. You can certainly do it again, but think of the dynamic. You know, it's interesting, when we were in Mexico, we were with Rezo and Sasha, who lead the church in Tbilisi, Georgia, and they were amazed. They were like, how? They would go up to these people and they'd say, yeah, Jane Barb studied with you. Jane Barb did this, Jane Barb. Barb came into the conference, and one of the sisters was getting appointed. You saw her up here, and she said, Barb, can you come up there with me? You had the biggest impact in my life. And there's a lot to do with the fact when we led Chicago, in 3 years we sent out 87 people. That just doesn't happen. It's not like Barb and I can do that. All right? That's God doing the miracles. This is the same here. by the dynamics of what we're doing here, we've already surpassed that. But he's like, how on earth does that happen? It's the grace of Spirit. It's the gratitude. And you may be thinking, hey, I'm tired, I've got a tough week. Hey, listen, this is your purpose. To change the world. There's nothing more dynamic than transforming a life. And you know, there's a lot of you I could point out. All you have to do is look at Max. Miracle! Miracle! I got with a guy yesterday. He called me up and he said, hey, let's get together. And I studied the Bible with him 2 years ago. And he's like, I'm not ready for it. He said, let's get together. I've been watching you. I've been watching what you guys have been doing. And he's asking, where's this person? Where's that person? Oh, yeah, he's in Seattle. Oh, he's in Chicago. Oh, he's, and he's like, oh my gosh. And he says he's coming next weekend. So that's awesome. But he's like, there's a dynamic, there's something special going on here. I've never seen it. He says, I share my faith with people and tell them to go to your church. It's crazy. All right. That doesn't just happen. It's got to be God's Spirit involved to change. So I'm going to throw out a challenge here. Encourage everybody to get 3 commitments for this coming Sunday. All right? And if you already got 3, do another 3. All right? But we need to be motivated by grace and gratitude. Somebody reached out to you, rescued you. Milwaukee's suffering. Wisconsin's suffering. The world is suffering. Let's have the attack mode, and to God be the glory.